Bank of America is technically insolvent right now. They're not actually because of this accounting rule that the government allows them to pull, but Bank of America technically is insolvent.
What does that mean?
So Bank of America, there's this thing called held to maturity, which uh, the okay, we're gonna just get into this, and you let me know when this is boring or you don't think people will be interested. But the U.S. banking system, the 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 Federal Reserve and the U.S. Central Bank cares only about one sector of the economy, and it's the U.S. banking system. That's all. In the U.S. banking system, collects depositors' money, so you deposit to Chase Bank, and then what they do is they turn around and they lend that money to the Fed, and they do that by buying
Bonds.
Treasury, right? Yeah. Okay. So so let's say in 2020, COVID, everyone stay in your house. Oh my gosh, we don't want the baby boomers, getting sick and dying because we owe them all sorts of healthcare and shit, and they're old, and we'd be fucked. So no one leave your house, and we're just gonna print a bunch of money. So the central bank, I don't even know how to I'm trying to do this with my hands. The central bank prints a lot of money. That money gets put into the economy of the everyday person. The everyday person then goes and deposits that into their bank, right? You're like, where do you want your stimulus check? Oh, send it to Chase. Okay, so now the central bank prints it. That money then gets into Chase, and then Chase gives it back to the central bank by buying risk-free bonds, right? By buying the 30-year, the 10-year, the 2-year, right? So kind of like, it kind of like runs in a circle, right? And it's back. But now on the bank's balance sheet, they have this bond, right? Okay. And interest rates are like 0 or whatever. So not actually, but whatever they were. Okay. Then the Fed raises rates as fast as possible because the one thing, these guys don't actually give a fuck about you. But the one thing they have to care about is inflation, because inflation is no bueno for politics, right? That's the only thing that we all care about, is that now I can't afford my life anymore.
Yep.
So you could huff and puff and be full of shit all you want until inflation. Now that's the one thing that Joe Biden, your president, will walk into your office and say, fix that shit now. Because no one can afford gas, no one can afford groceries.
Well, that's when people get pissed.
That's when you get civil unrest.
Yeah, that's when people get pissed.
So now the central bank doesn't actually give a fuck, but it's politics. People say, no, the government doesn't control the Fed. The Fed has its own chairman. Bullshit, right? It's all intertwined and conjoined.
It has to be.
Okay. So Biden says, fix this shit. How do you fix inflation? You hike up interest rates. So interest rates go up as fast as they've ever gone up in history of the dollar. And what does that do to the bond market? Bonds get crushed. Because if I bought a bond at 1% rate, and now all of a sudden bonds get 5%, hey, do you want my 1% bond? Why the fuck would I want that dog shit? I can get a 5% one. So now all of the whole banking system is now underwater.
The whole banking system is holding these 1% bonds.
Yes, because think about it. How does a bank make money? It takes your deposit, and guys, there's no actual dollars sitting in a vault. What a bank does is it takes your dollars, it gives it back to the central bank, and the central bank gives them a bond, which gives you your principal and interest rate back later. You want a 30-year, you want a 10-year, you want a 5-year, you want a 2-year, right? And so what the bank's balance sheet is full of are these bonds. So if you were to show up to the bank and say, hey, I actually want to withdraw my money, what they're actually doing is selling these bonds and then giving you the money. But if they put $10 into a bond and that bond's now worth $5 and you say, I'll take my $10 back, they don't have it because they sell the thing that they did with your $10. They're only getting $5 back. That's what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. That's a run on the bank. So here's what the Fed has. The Fed is stuck in the situation where the entire banking system's insolvent. And that's truly what they care about, because the banking system is designed to collect our deposits and give it back to the government, right? It's just like rehypothecating of lending and infinite money printing. Here, we printed money, give it to you guys. We give it to the banks give it back to the government, right? And so the whole banking system's insolvent, but they have this inflation problem. So pick this is what's happening today. Which one do you want?
I mean, dude, inflation will piss people off. If people can't get the money that they think they have out the bank, that's when some purge level shit
Okay,
occurs.
actually, I'm really enjoying this conversation because now we're arriving at what is reality. So what happens is they do give you the money that you have. The way they do that is effectively by printing it. And so you
Mm.
get the $10, but the $10 isn't worth as much when you deposited it. Now is it? Let's say the $10 is worth, for all intents and purposes, I don't know what's worth $10. Let's say 2 carton of eggs, okay? And then what I just explained happens, and the government fixes the problem and makes sure the bank has your $10, but now it's only worth 1 carton of eggs. You have $10, right? But it just doesn't get you as much anymore.
Mm.
And that's what happens every single time. So and you know who wins? The people that own assets, the people that own Bitcoin. So if the same amount of Bitcoin got me 2 cartons of eggs, now I got 10 cartons of eggs. You know, oh, loser, you don't own any dollars. Yeah, well, now who's laughing, right? I don't own that piece of paper. I don't want it. I don't
Yep.
want it. So anyway, Bank of America is technically insolvent. So they're sitting on all of these instruments that are underwater. However, the government made a rule change where they say if you lent us money by buying these pieces of dog shit and you don't intend to sell them, you don't have to mark them on your balance sheet what they're actually worth.
How is that legal?
The government makes the rules. If
Nice little rule change.
yeah, but like is Bank of
That's
America
just a rule
but
change.
is Bank of America going to go under? No,
It
it's
can't.
effectively
Yeah,
like a
it's
government
nationalized.
bank.
Yeah, it's
Right.
nationalized.
Okay. So instead of coming out and saying that and saying our banking system is effectively China's banking system,
Right.
we're more like the CCP than you think. Like we go into Twitter and say what you're not allowed to tweet. We spy on you guys. When there's some disease out there that we don't know about, we don't let you leave your house. Our banks are all actually insolvent and actually nationalized and state owned. But if you were to put it like that, you'd be like, wait a second, how different are we than China? But no, they say, no, they're not insolvent. Those are held to maturity. They're not going to sell them anyway. So they don't need to change the price of them because they're going to hold them for 30 years anyway. Yeah, but that's not the point. If I were to go to the bank, if we all went to the bank and withdrew from Bank of America, they wouldn't have it. The government would need to print and bail them out. So anyway, the Federal Reserve has this problem where they're like, okay, do I fight inflation and help get it all the way down? Or, right, do I let my entire banking system, everything fall apart and let everything fail?
You do the first one.
You fight inflation and let
Yeah.
everything fail?
No. You do not let everything fail.
Oh, so you bail everyone out.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's when people are like, oh man, CPI is down, like the consumer price index, how they measure inflation, but I still can't seem to afford anything. It must be me. No, that's why they manipulate that thing.
Mm.
There's no such thing as one inflation metric. How you live your life and how I live my life are entirely different.
Right.
If you sit in your basement and eat ramen noodles and sit in the dark all day, your consumer price index is very different than than Dan Belzerian, who's flying on jets and he has to feed 40 models a day. Like, what's that guy's CPI?
It's gone up.
Probably different than yours,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea that the government's like, well, this index that we made, inflation's good. Yeah, bullshit. And so that's what the financial market, that's why all the Wall Street wants Bitcoin, is they're asking themselves the same question you are. Do I think that the government is going to let this whole thing fail?
No.
Okay.
They'll never do that.
Then they have to print more dollars. And so what do I want to own? First of all, not dollars. And then second of all, the scarcest thing I can get my hands on. So why are there a bunch of ETFs? Again, I'm not a genius. I'm just logical. It's just like probably because everyone's afraid of what I'm afraid of.